Let's talk politics and public Christianity. There you go. How on the pulse am I? I'm talking to you a week after the election about politics and public Christianity, but I don't want you to misconstrue me as having one of those how to vote sections of a Christian talk, because I want to talk to you about something a little larger, which is you may have noticed that the public face of Christianity includes politics. Now, we live in an age where there are no unpublished thoughts, okay? So that's the world of social media, and if we're thinking it, we're publicising it. And what we learn is that some people, at least, intuitively interpret faith through the lens of politics. So one of the defining pictures of Scott Morrison's tenure was when he invited cameras into Horizon Church. He invited them, and they took pictures of him in a service of Pentecostal worship. And from that point on, the public discourse about Morrison was dominated, fairly and unfairly, by an interweaving of his Christian faith and people's perception of his politics. Now, you could write a PhD thesis on that, and people will, but I'm only making one point here, which is that people will easily read Christianity through a political lens. And at one level, that's not a problem, because Christianity is political. If Jesus is Lord of the world, he's Lord over everything to do with the world, including the polis, from which we get the word political. And so Jesus cares about the families. Jesus cares about the environment. He cares about industrial relations and religious freedom. He cares about refugees and domestic violence and 1,000 other things besides. So Christianity is political. He isn't Lord just over that hour at church on a Sunday and then he disappears from the throne on Monday. But Christianity is not a belief where we are so heavenly minded that we are of no earthly good. It's the opposite. We're so heavenly minded that we're of profound earthly good. And so Christianity is political. But for a moment, I want to reflect about the way that Christians publicise their politics together with their faith. Most Christians in Australia are not politicians, and most Christians in Australia are not members of political parties. We have no obligation, therefore, to be partisan or to toe a party line. And yet the interesting thing is that I find for many Christians, their politics is entirely predictable. So I have wonderful friends, many of whom exhort me to attend to the important issues of abortion and euthanasia and religious freedom, the saturation levels of pornography in our culture, and so on and so forth. And I also have wonderful friends who exhort me to care for the poor, to consider the restraint of our impacts negatively upon the environment. They want me to consider the reforming of our justice system with regard to control of abusive relationships and so on and so forth. And in most instances, those people are all of them brilliant advocates of the causes that they espouse. But what is interesting is the near total silence about the other things. That is to say, people often feel the need to not talk about their political other and to even denigrate the political other as being unimportant. Now, I want to say to you, that's how political parties behave. There would be a different talk I would give if you were all politicians and if you were all members of political parties. But let's just assume for a moment that political parties need to be about their thing and need to cast aspersions on the other thing. The average Christian is under no obligation to do that. You can be very political without being partisan. But my very limited anecdotal evidence, my Facebook page, reinforces to me that we often conform our political heart to the scripts the world provides. And the result is a world where sometimes our religion is downstream of our politics. That's where your party political choices shape your Christian expression when it actually should be the other way around. My politics tells me what to care about as a Christian. This is a bigger problem probably in the United States than it is in Australia, but I'm not talking in the United States. But there you have the problem that now the word evangelical is more political than it is theological. People have to write articles saying, just because you're an evangelical, you don't have to vote Republican. One of the things we used to say, and probably still do, but I'm not there, at the Centre for Public Christianity, was this slogan. We had many slogans, but one of the slogans was, "Let us surprise you." We had many goals with our content. This is not the only one we had. But one goal was that people would find our voice offering a surprising perspective. Surprise because it danced to a different drum beat. Surprise because it didn't follow the dominant rhythms of our culture. Now, I want to say to you that surprise can come in all sorts of ways as a result of Christ. Sometimes Christians bring surprise by refusing to join in. So 1 Peter 4 verses 3 and 4, "For you have spent enough time in the past doing what pagans choose to do, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, and detestable idolatry. They are surprised that you do not join them in their reckless wild living, and they heap abuse on you." So by surprise, I'm not talking about the fact that people will necessarily like it, like surprise, that's awesome, but rather the surprise of sitting there going, because of my faith, I actually have to draw a line. But surprise also comes through grace in the scriptures. Think about the parable of labourers in the vineyard, where people are shocked about the generosity of God towards those who have not worked adequately in people's minds. Surprise comes through humility, how regularly Jesus surprises his disciples by his total reconfiguration about the way that power and service should work. In Romans 12, Paul says that Christians no longer conform to the pattern of the world. Instead, they are transformed by the renewing of their mind. And so our aim isn't to aim for surprise, but when you fix your eyes upon Jesus, surprise results, because Jesus is the one whose rule upends the worldly categories. And so therefore, without trying to chase it, I consider it a joy when, in my public and my private thinking, people say to me, "I'm surprised you think like that." Like when they find out that being pro-life means I love both the unborn and refugees. That strengthening the family includes caring for the poor. That being passionate about the Creator includes caring for his creation. Because the goal for me is that even in my politics, I want to be able to testify there's a better story, there's a better music to dance to, and there's a better king to serve.